And welcome back to Patience is a Virtue, the YouTube channel devoted to finding value in future sports wagering. I'm your host, Andrew, and on today's episode, we're going to be turning the page over to college football, and we're going to take a look at the odds to win the Big Ten championship. College football is only a few weeks away, so I wanted to get started and take a look at some conference title futures. Now, to get started, let's take a look at the odds. Best price I'm seeing in the Big Ten championship is Ohio State at plus 195 over at FanDuel. Penn State is plus 250. You can find that at multiple books. Oregon, we have at plus 350 over at BetMGM. Michigan plus 1,000 at FanDuel. USC at 2,500 at Bet365. And then everybody else in the conference is at least 2,000 spread across multiple books. So for me, I'm actually only going to consider Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. I really think this is too big a leap for Michigan to make this year, especially since they're going to be relying on a true freshman quarterback who has not taken a snap in college yet. He might turn out to be fantastic, but for right now, I just can't see Michigan contending for the Big Ten title this year. And I also don't think, or I guess I should say, I'm also not a believer in USC. They really have not lived up to the expectations of Lincoln Riley when he switched over from Oklahoma. And I just don't see them being able to crack the top two in this league, with Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon being there, Michigan as well. So I'm really going to narrow it down to the top three teams on the leaderboard. So why do I think it's going to be those three teams? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but very simply, Penn State has a lot coming back. They have one of the biggest returning starters for the Big Ten, and for a team that made it deep into the playoff last year. And I really think they have a lot of experience to go deep. And then for Oregon and Ohio State, they've of course have a lot of talent that they've gotten both through the transfer portal and through high school, and that they've been able to develop. And really, they're just one of the top two teams. I mean, there's not much else to say. It's Ohio State and Oregon. They're really going to be there up at the top. So I think that's why I really want to consider just Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon for this market right now, at least. So what I really want to focus on for this episode is taking a look at the schedule. Now, for me, Ohio State has three potential tough games. Two of them are going to be on the road. So they're going to play at Illinois. Now, Illinois is a sleeper for the conference title, and that is going to be a very difficult game. Illinois also has a lot coming back, so you can't sleep on them for that game, but Ohio State should be able to pull that one out. But 2 weeks later, they're also going to play host to Penn State, and that might be the biggest game of the entire season for the Big Ten. Now, luckily for Ohio State, it is going to be at home, but that is still going to be a very tough game. Now, Ohio State also plays at Michigan on the road in the final game of the season. Now, I'm not a huge believer in Michigan, but they are a good squad, and so that could be potentially a difficult game for Ohio State. Really, I do think that Ohio State should be able to win at least two out of those three games, and they do definitely have the talent to win all three. So for Ohio State, it's a little difficult, but I think it is manageable in terms of the schedule. For Penn State, I think that they actually have the hardest schedule of those three teams. So they're going to open up the Big Ten season by hosting Oregon, which I would think that Penn State will be favored, but that really could be close to a toss-up game. Don't be surprised if Oregon is able to go into Happy Valley and pull out that victory. And then later on, Penn State also has to go to Iowa and Ohio State in back-to-back weeks. Now, I would expect that Penn State is probably going to come out of those three games with at least one loss, possibly two. And quite frankly, it wouldn't be completely shocking if they ended up with losses in all three of those games. But I think definitely you're going to be looking at 1 to 2 losses at a minimum, unless Penn State exceeds the already high expectations that a lot of people have for them for this coming year. Now, finally, a quick look at Oregon. Now, Oregon's two toughest games are on the road, those being at Iowa and at Penn State. They really should be able to beat Iowa, but Iowa is another one of those teams that people are considering to be a little bit of a sleeper team, especially if their transfers are able to hit and they're able to get some really good play, especially on their offensive side of the ball. So you can't rule out a loss at Iowa. And then also at Penn State. That is going to be a difficult game for Oregon. Should be close to a toss-up, but I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State is able to pull that one out as well. So really, Oregon could end up with two conceivable losses on this schedule. So if you like any of these teams and you want to take a future on them, here is how I would play it. So first, I'm going to start with Oregon. I think if you do like Oregon, I think you can go ahead and you can take a price on them at the beginning of the season, right? Now, if you do want to get a potentially a better number, you might want to wait until after the Penn State game. Okay. Now, if you think that Penn State has a good chance of pulling that one out and Oregon loses, that's still just going to be the first loss for Oregon in a conference in the conference schedule, and Oregon really has a good chance of winning the rest of their games. But after that loss to Penn State, their price should increase. So you're going to get a little bit of a better shot on Oregon if you want to wait and take them then. You could also think about taking a little bit of Oregon to start the season. And then if Penn State is able to win, maybe you buy back even a little bit more on Oregon if their price does go ahead and drop. But Oregon does have a very good shot of making the Big Ten title game. If you like Ohio State, I think what you need to do is actually buy before the season because the price really probably has nowhere to go but down. With two other good teams in the conference, I don't know how much further it's going to go down, but you will lose a little bit of value if Ohio State is able to continually roll through these games and then you see a slip up by either Oregon or Penn State in the standings. Um, Again, Ohio State does have a couple potential slip ups at Illinois, a very good team, and then at home against Penn State. So it is possible that they could lose one of those games, but even with the game at Michigan, you do have some good hedge opportunities, but Ohio State has the potential to win every single one of these games on the schedule. And I would think at most they're only going to lose one. So I definitely do think Ohio State has a very good shot of making the Big Ten title game. And in the end, that's really what you want. If you can just get one of the teams in there and that you have a future on, then you can take a look at possibly hedging if you want to do that in that final title game. But I think there is a good shot that that Ohio State will be able to get there. So I would go ahead and take Ohio State before the season starts if you do like their shots. Finally, looking at Penn State, instead of actually taking a future on them before the season starts, how I would actually play Penn State is to just do a money line rollover, and you're going to do that in the games against Oregon, against Iowa, and against Ohio State. So really what that means is instead of actually taking a set future with a single price, you're just going to bet Penn State to win those individual games. The good thing about that is considering where Penn State's price is at, you're going to get close to, if not a better overall profit. If Penn State is able to win each of those games, you're probably going to make more money. You don't have to wait till the very end of the season to see if they actually win the Big Ten title game, and which means you're going to get paid out a little bit sooner. And again, I think Penn State does have the hardest schedule. So for me, I would have rather play the money line rollover on Penn State home games. And if you don't want to play them, say, against Ohio State, you don't have to do that. That's probably going to be the one where you're going to get the best value, but you can just choose to not play that if you want to try and increase your profit margin. So for me, wouldn't take Penn State. I do like the idea of buying both Ohio State and Oregon before the season starts. But if you just want to take one, you don't want to really use the arbitrage method, go ahead and take just Ohio State. I really do believe that their hardest game is going to be home against Penn State. I have a hard time seeing them losing two games throughout this schedule. They might slip up and get one loss. That's not going to be too surprising. Ohio State often does have one loss on their schedule, one conference loss, I guess I should say. But I really do think Ohio State has a very good shot of making the Big Ten tournament, making the Big Ten championship. And at that point, you can decide how you want to play it. But at least you're going to have a team with a future in that game. And more likely than not, Ohio State is going to be favored in that game. And so you're going to get a better price on the other team if you do choose to hedge. So the way that I'm going to play the Big Ten championship looking forward is I'm going to take a look at getting a future on Ohio State, possibly a future also on Oregon. And if you like Penn State, just go ahead and do a money line rollover game on their toughest games on the schedule. So I think that's how you ought to play the Big Ten starting right now. So I want to actually end this episode with a little bit of a different pick. You know, I do futures, but I have a fan of the channel. His name is Jim. He's a huge super fan of the Cleveland Guardians, and I want to give out a special pick for him concerning the Cleveland Guardians. And instead of this being a future, this is going to be a single game pick. So what I'm taking a look at is the game against the Guardians. They're going to be playing at home against the Colorado Rockies, and this is going to take place on Wednesday. So today is Monday, July 28th. So this will be on Wednesday, July 30th. And I want to specifically look at the run line for that game. If you don't know what the run line is, it's basically the spread for baseball. It means that a team is going to either win or going to cover by 1.5 runs. So it's always 1.5 runs. So if you're going to take Cleveland, you're expecting them to win by at least 2 runs. And if you like Colorado, you're expecting them to either win or lose by just a single run. So currently, and again, I'm recording this on Monday, and the Rockies and the Guardians, they're going to start their series in about an hour or so. So this might change by the time you watch it. But as I'm currently recording, the Guardians are currently in second place in the AL Central, and Colorado, they're in last place in the NL West, and they're also the worst team in baseball according to record and by just about every single metric you can come up with. Now, as of today, Cleveland is 6-4 in their last 10 games overall, and that includes 5-2 in their last 7 home matches. While the Rockies are 5-5 in their last 10 overall games, but they're only 13-40 on the road, so they're really not performing well outside of Coors Field. Now, this is going to be the third game in the series again on Wednesday, and the Rockies have lost the last game in 4 of their last 5 overall series, and they've lost by at least 2 runs in they've lost by at least 2 runs in their last 3 series. So by the end of the series, the Rockies are done. The other team is able to at least cover the run line. Now, on the other side of that, in Cleveland's last 5 home wins, they've won 4 of those games by at least 2 runs. So when Cleveland is winning at home, they're winning by the run line. And that is one of the reasons why I do think Cleveland is going to be able to cover this line. Now, in addition, we don't have the projected starter for the Cleveland Guardians right now, but for Colorado, they're expected to start Kyle Freeland, and he is currently boasting a very impressive record of 2 wins and 10 losses with a 5.24 ERA. So I really do think this is a good shot, not just on Wednesday, but for this series overall. A chance for the Cleveland Guardians offense to kind of wake up and for their bats to start doing a little bit of singing, so to speak. Cleveland really needs to close the gap on the wild card. They're not too far out, but this is a great opportunity. They're playing the worst team in baseball, and they're playing them at home. I really do think Cleveland, they should be able to win all 3 games. I'm a little worried about Tuesday's game. Colorado does perform fairly well in the second game of a 3-game series. But I do think Cleveland should be able to pull all these out, and I definitely expect them to be able to win the 3rd game against Colorado, and I think they're going to be able to beat them on the run line. So I don't have a price for this yet, but I'm going to take a look at Cleveland to win on the run line. That's minus 1.5 runs on Wednesday, July 30th. And that is a special pick for, again, super fan of the channel, Jim. We're going to go for the Guardians. We're going to hope they're able to pull this one out. And that's going to do it for this edition of Patience is a Virtue. Always remember to never bet more than you can afford to lose. Make sure it's always fun. And remember, patience is a virtue.